The rain hammered against the metal roof of the military training facility as Sarah Martinez stood in line with 37 other recruits. At 19, she was the only woman among them, her slight frame dwarfed by the towering figures of men who had grown up hunting, shooting, and dreaming of military glory. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on faces that ranged from confident to nervous, but none quite like hers, determined yet quietly defiant. Sergeant Williams paced in front of them, his boots creating a rhythmic echo that seemed to match the drumming rain. His weathered face bore the scars of 3 tours overseas, and his eyes held the kind of hardness that came from seeing too much. When he spoke, his voice cut through the air like a blade. "Today you'll be assigned your weapons for advanced training," he announced, his gaze sweeping across the line. "Each of you will receive equipment based on your performance scores, physical assessments, and aptitude tests." Sarah's heart raced. For weeks, she had outperformed most of her fellow recruits in marksmanship. Her scores were consistently in the top 5, and during the preliminary shooting exercises, she had shown a natural steadiness that even impressed the instructors. She had grown up on a ranch in Texas, where her father had taught her to shoot before she could properly ride a bicycle. The weight of a rifle in her hands felt as natural as breathing. When Sergeant Williams reached the equipment table, he began calling names. Thompson, M16A4. Rodriguez, M4 Carbine. Jackson, M249 Saw. Each name was followed by appreciative nods from the recipients and envious glances from those still waiting. The rain seemed to grow heavier, creating a constant white noise that made the moments between name calls feel eternal. Sarah watched as her fellow recruits received their assignments, noting the pattern. The highest scorers got the most advanced weapons, the specialized equipment that marked them as serious soldiers destined for elite units. "Peterson, Barrett, M82, Williams called out, and a murmur of approval rippled through the group. The Barrett was a sniper rifle, a weapon that commanded respect. Peterson, a tall young man from Montana with steady hands and eagle eyes, stepped forward with obvious pride. Sarah's palms were sweating despite the cold. Her scores were better than Peterson's. Her accuracy ratings were higher. Her physical fitness scores placed her in the top 10%. When Williams had asked them to write down their preferred weapon assignments 2 weeks ago, she had written down exactly what she wanted: access to the Advanced Sniper Training Program. Chun, M24 SWS, Williams continued. Another sniper rifle. Chun had scored well, but not as well as Sarah. She began to feel a knot forming in her stomach, but she pushed the doubt away. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe they were saving the best assignments for last. The list continued. Brooks, M40A5. Stevens, M14 EBR. More precision rifles, more specialized weapons going to men whose scores were good, but not exceptional. Sarah's confidence began to waver. She glanced around at the remaining recruits and realized with growing dread that she was one of only 5 left. Davis, M16A2, Williams called out. A basic rifle. Davis looked disappointed, but stepped forward to collect his weapon. 4 recruits remained. Kumar, M4A1. Standard issue. Kumar shrugged and moved to the table. 3 left. Foster, M16A1. Another basic assignment. Foster's shoulders slumped visibly. 2 recruits remained standing in line. Sarah and a young man named Bradley whose scores had been consistently in the bottom quartile. Sarah's mouth felt dry. This couldn't be happening. There had to be some mistake. She had earned her place among the top performers. Her shooting scores were documented. Her dedication was evident. Her performance reviews were stellar. Bradley, Williams called out, and Sarah's heart sank further. M24 SWS. A sniper rifle. Bradley, who had missed the target entirely on 3 separate occasions during basic marksmanship training, was being assigned a precision weapon while Sarah stood there empty-handed. The injustice of it hit her like a physical blow. Now she was alone. 37 other recruits had received their assignments, and she remained standing in formation, feeling increasingly invisible and forgotten. The silence stretched on, broken only by the relentless rain and the shuffling feet of the other recruits as they examined their new weapons. Williams looked at his clipboard, then at Sarah, then back at the clipboard. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture suggested discomfort. Finally, He set the clipboard down and walked over to a separate table where a few remaining weapons lay in cases. "Martinez," he said, his voice lacking the crisp authority he had used for the other assignments. M16A1. The words hung in the air like an accusation. An M16A1, one of the most basic rifles in the military's arsenal. A weapon that had been standard issue decades ago. It wasn't just a poor assignment. It was a deliberate insult. Sarah felt the eyes of every other recruit on her. Some looked sympathetic, others confused, but a few wore expressions that made her blood boil, smirks of satisfaction, as if this outcome confirmed something they had believed all along. She stepped forward, her boots clicking against the concrete floor with a confidence she didn't feel. When she reached Williams, she looked him directly in the eye. "Sergeant, I believe there's been an error." Williams' expression hardened. "Excuse me, recruit? My scores qualify me for advanced weapons training. My marksmanship ratings are in the top 5%. I specifically requested consideration for the sniper program." A snicker came from somewhere behind her. Then another. Soon, several of the male recruits were struggling to contain their laughter. The sound was like sandpaper against Sarah's nerves. "Did you hear that?" Someone whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She wants a sniper rifle. Maybe we should get her a pink one," another voice added, followed by more suppressed laughter. Williams held up a hand for silence, but his expression suggested he wasn't entirely displeased by the reaction. "Martinez, weapon assignments are based on multiple factors. Your assignment has been made. But, Sergeant, with respect, my performance metrics clearly demonstrate your assignment has been made," Williams repeated, his voice rising. "The decision is final." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks. Around her, the barely contained amusement of her fellow recruits was becoming more obvious. Someone coughed in a way that sounded suspiciously like "princess," and others began to shift restlessly, the entertainment value of the situation clearly appealing to them. "I'm requesting to speak with the commanding officer," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. This time the laughter wasn't suppressed. It erupted openly from several recruits, echoing off the metal walls and mixing with the sound of rain. William's face flushed red, whether from embarrassment or anger, Sarah couldn't tell. "You're requesting what?" Williams demanded. "To speak with the commanding officer about my weapon assignment. I believe I've been treated unfairly." More laughter. Someone behind her said, "Oh, this is Rich. She's going to complain to Daddy." Another voice added, "Maybe she should stick to cooking and cleaning instead of playing soldier." Sarah spun around, her eyes flashing with anger. "Who said that?" she demanded. But the faces looking back at her were a mixture of innocent expressions and barely concealed grins. No one stepped forward to claim responsibility. Williams stepped between Sarah and the other recruits. "That's enough," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. "Martinez, collect your weapon and fall in with the others." "I want to speak with Commander Harrison," Sarah insisted. The mention of the base commander's name seemed to surprise Williams. Commander Harrison had a reputation as a fair but demanding officer, someone who judged soldiers based on their performance rather than anything else. If Sarah could get her case in front of him, she might have a chance. Williams studied her for a long moment. Behind him, the other recruits had grown quiet, sensing that this confrontation had moved beyond simple hazing into something more serious. "You really want to waste the commander's time with this?" Williams asked. "It's not a waste of time if the process is being compromised by bias," Sarah replied. The word bias hung in the air like a challenge. Williams' face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. "Fine," he said. "But when Commander Harrison tells you the same thing I just did, I don't want to hear another word about it. And if you're wasting his time, there will be consequences." Sarah nodded. "I understand, Sergeant." Williams looked around at the other recruits, most of whom were still grinning at what they clearly saw as Sarah's futile gesture. "The rest of you, familiarize yourselves with your weapons. We'll reconvene in 1 hour for basic maintenance training." As the group began to disperse, Sarah heard fragments of conversation that made her jaw clench. "Can't wait to see her face when the commander laughs her out of his office. I give it 5 minutes before she's crying. Should have stayed home and learned to bake cookies." Sarah ignored them all, focusing instead on what she would say to Commander Harrison. She had facts, figures, and documentation on her side. Her performance spoke for itself. Whatever prejudice was influencing these assignments, she was confident that a fair hearing would set things right. She couldn't have known that within the hour, her simple request for equal treatment would set in motion events that would not only vindicate her, but would also earn her access to a weapon so classified that most of the recruits mocking her had never even heard its name. The rain continued to pound against the building as Sarah walked toward the commander's office, her standard-issue boots splashing through puddles that reflected the gray sky above. Behind her, the laughter of her fellow recruits faded into the distance, but the determination in her step only grew stronger. She had no way of knowing that Commander Harrison had been watching the entire weapons assignment process from his office window, or that he had already made several phone calls that would change everything. She simply walked forward, driven by the certainty that in the military she had chosen to serve, merit should matter more than gender, and performance should speak louder than prejudice. The guard at the commander's office looked surprised when she approached and requested a meeting. Sarah Martinez was about to discover that sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, the universe has a way of standing up for you in return. The real test was just beginning. The hallway leading to Commander Harrison's office seemed to stretch forever. Sarah's footsteps echoed against the polished floors as she walked past photographs of distinguished military personnel, their stern faces seeming to judge her with each step. The rain had stopped, but water still dripped from the eaves outside, creating a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Staff Sergeant Collins, the commander's aide, looked up from his desk as Sarah approached. He was a lean man in his 30s with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen combat. When Sarah explained her situation, his expression shifted from polite attention to something more interested. "You want to challenge a weapons assignment?" he asked, setting down his pen. "I want to request a fair review of the assignment process," Sarah corrected, "based on documented performance metrics." Collins studied her for a moment. "Wait here," he said, disappearing into the inner office. Sarah stood at attention, trying to calm her nerves. Through the partially open door, she could hear muffled conversation but couldn't make out the words. Minutes passed. She began to wonder if Commander Harrison would even see her, or if this was simply a polite way of making her wait before being dismissed. The door opened wider, and Collins emerged. "The commander will see you now." Commander Harrison's office was larger than Sarah had expected, with windows that offered a view of the entire training facility. The walls were lined with commendations, photos from various military operations, and a bookshelf filled with tactical manuals and military history. Behind an imposing wooden desk sat a man whose presence immediately commanded respect. Commander Harrison was in his late 40s, with graying hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail at once. His uniform was pristine, his posture perfect, but there was something in his expression that suggested he was more than just another career officer going through the motions. "Recruit Martinez," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit down." Sarah remained standing. "Thank you, sir, but I prefer to stand." A slight smile crossed Harrison's face. "As you wish. Staff Sergeant Collins tells me you have concerns about your weapon assignment." "Yes, sir. I believe the assignment was made unfairly." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "Those are serious words, Martinez. You're essentially accusing Sergeant Williams of discrimination." "I'm stating facts, sir. My marksmanship scores place me in the top 5% of this training group. My overall performance ratings are consistently high. Yet I was assigned basic equipment while recruits with significantly lower scores received advanced weapons." Harrison picked up a tablet from his desk and began scrolling through what appeared to be performance data. "Your scores are indeed impressive," he said after a moment. "Marksmanship, 94%. Physical fitness, 91%. Tactical knowledge, 96%. These are numbers that would qualify you for any specialized training program we offer." Sarah felt a surge of vindication. "Yes, sir. That's exactly my point. Tell me about your background, Martinez. Where did you learn to shoot?" "My father's ranch in Texas, sir. He taught me when I was 8 years old. We hunted together, competed in local shooting competitions. I've been handling firearms for over a decade." Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "And why did you join the military?" "To serve my country, sir. To be part of something bigger than myself. To use my skills in defense of others." "Noble goals," Harrison said. "But you must understand, Martinez, that military service isn't just about individual performance. It's about unit cohesion, about working as part of a team. Sometimes individual desires have to be subordinated to the greater good. Sarah felt her heart sink. This was beginning to sound like a polite way of telling her to accept the situation. With respect, sir, how does giving inferior equipment to qualified personnel serve the greater good? Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. That's a fair question. He was quiet for a moment, then stood and walked to the window. Tell me, what do you think about the reaction of your fellow recruits when you requested this meeting? They found it amusing, sir. Amusing? Yes, I imagine they did. Harrison turned back to face her. And how did that make you feel? Sarah hesitated. This felt like dangerous territory. It made me more determined to prove them wrong, sir. Good answer. Harrison returned to his desk and picked up his phone. Collins, could you ask Sergeant Williams to join us? And also ask Master Sergeant Rodriguez to come over from the advanced training facility. Sarah's pulse quickened. Master Sergeant Rodriguez was legendary among the recruits. He ran the elite sniper training program, a course so difficult that only about 20% of those who attempted it successfully completed it. While they waited, Harrison continued reviewing data on his tablet. Your psychological evaluation is interesting reading, Martinez. The assessor noted exceptional resilience under pressure and strong leadership potential. They also noted something else. Demonstrates remarkable composure when facing skepticism or hostility. Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sergeant Williams entered, followed by a man Sarah recognized immediately from briefings and demonstrations. Master Sergeant Rodriguez was a compact, weathered man whose calm presence seemed to fill the room. His reputation as one of the military's finest marksmen and instructors was legendary. Gentlemen, Harrison said, we're here to discuss Recruit Martinez's weapon assignment. Williams shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I followed standard protocol. The assignments were made based on multiple factors. I'm sure they were, Harrison replied. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, you've been observing training exercises. What's your assessment of Recruit Martinez's capabilities? Rodriguez looked at Sarah with eyes that seemed to see everything. She's got natural talent, he said simply. Steady hands, good instincts, excellent eye for distance, and wind compensation. Better than most of the recruits I've seen this year. Williams looked surprised. Sir, while her scores are good, there are other considerations such as... Harrison interrupted. Williams glanced at Sarah, then back at the commander. Unit cohesion, sir. The other recruits, there might be resistance to having a female in advanced training roles. Resistance, Harrison repeated flatly. You mean the kind of resistance we just witnessed in the equipment bay? The kind where grown men laugh at a qualified soldier for requesting fair treatment. Sir, Harrison held up a hand. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, in your professional opinion, is Recruit Martinez qualified for advanced marksmanship training? Absolutely, Rodriguez replied without hesitation. More than qualified. Harrison turned back to Williams. Sergeant, I want you to explain to me why a recruit with superior scores was assigned basic equipment while others with inferior performance received advanced weapons. Williams was sweating now. Sir, it was a judgment call based on based on what exactly? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Sarah could see Williams struggling to find words that wouldn't incriminate him further. Finally, Harrison spoke again. Let me share something with you, gentlemen. For the past month, I've been conducting a review of our training and assignment processes. I've been looking for patterns, inconsistencies, areas where we might improve our methods. He picked up a folder from his desk. What I found was troubling. Female recruits, regardless of their performance scores, consistently receive less advanced equipment and training opportunities than their male counterparts. The disparity is so marked that it can't be explained by chance or legitimate assessment criteria. Williams had gone pale. Sir, if there have been oversights, Harrison repeated. That's an interesting word for systematic bias. Sarah felt as though she was watching her future being decided in real time. The conversation had moved far beyond her individual case into something much larger. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, Harrison continued, I'm implementing some changes to our advanced training selection process. I want you to evaluate candidates based solely on objective performance metrics. No other factors are to be considered. Understood, sir. Harrison turned back to Sarah. Martinez, you requested a fair review of your assignment. Here's what I'm going to do. Master Sergeant Rodriguez is going to put you through the same evaluation process he uses for our most advanced training programs. If you meet his standards, you'll be reassigned accordingly. Thank you, sir, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. Don't thank me yet, Rodriguez interjected. The evaluation isn't just about shooting. It's about mental toughness, adaptability, and performance under extreme stress. Many recruits who think they want advanced training discover they're not prepared for what it actually entails. Harrison nodded. There's something else you should understand, Martinez. What happened today in that equipment bay is going to happen again. There will be people who question your presence, your abilities, your right to be there. The higher you advance, the more intense that scrutiny will become. I understand, sir. Do you? Harrison studied her carefully. Because once you start down this path, there's no going back to being invisible. You'll be representing not just yourself, but every woman who might follow in your footsteps. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir. I am. Harrison nodded slowly. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, when can you conduct the evaluation? Tomorrow morning, sir. 0600 hours. Excellent. Harrison turned back to Williams. Sergeant, you'll reassign recruit Martinez to temporary advanced training status pending the evaluation results. And I want a full review of all weapon assignments made in the past 6 months. Williams nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. One more thing, Harrison added, his voice taking on a harder edge. The laughing and comments that occurred in the equipment bay today are unacceptable. This is a professional military training environment, not a high school locker room. Any further incidents of that nature will result in disciplinary action. Make sure that message is clearly communicated to all personnel. Understood, sir. Harrison stood, indicating the meeting was over. Martinez, report to Master Sergeant Rodriguez tomorrow morning. Come prepared for the most challenging day of your training so far. As they filed out of the office, Rodriguez fell into step beside Sarah. You realize what you've gotten yourself into? He asked quietly. I think so, Master Sergeant. No, you don't, he said with a slight smile. But you will. Meet me at Range 7 tomorrow. Bring water, energy bars, and whatever determination you can muster. You're going to need all of it. Sarah nodded, her mind racing with anticipation and nervousness. As she walked back toward the barracks, she noticed other recruits watching her with new expressions. Word had apparently spread quickly that she'd met with the commander. Some faces showed curiosity, others suspicion, and a few displayed open hostility. She realized Commander Harrison had been right. There was no going back to being invisible now. Whatever happened tomorrow, her life in the military was about to change dramatically. She just had to prove she was ready for whatever came next. The evening air was crisp as Sarah walked across the training ground, her mind focused on the challenge ahead. Tomorrow would determine not just her own future, but potentially the opportunities available to every woman who might follow in her path. She was ready to find out what she was truly made of. The alarm clock screamed at 0500 hours, but Sarah had been awake for 20 minutes already, staring at the ceiling of the barracks and running through shooting fundamentals in her mind. Around her, other recruits slept peacefully, unaware that in 1 hour, their fellow soldier would be undergoing an evaluation that could change everything. Sarah dressed quietly in the pre-dawn darkness, her movements precise and practiced. She had laid out her gear the night before. Combat boots polished to mirror brightness, uniform pressed, and perfect, equipment arranged with military precision. As she prepared to leave, she noticed a few other recruits watching her from their bunks, their faces barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. Good luck, whispered Martinez's bunkmate, a quiet young man named Davidson who had never joined in the mockery. Show them what you can do. Sarah nodded her thanks and slipped out into the cool morning air. The base was just beginning to wake up. A few early risers jogged past on their morning runs, and she could see lights starting to come on in various buildings. The sky was clear, promising good weather for whatever challenges lay ahead. Range 7 was located at the far end of the training facility, separated from the standard shooting ranges by a series of hills and natural barriers. As Sarah approached, she could see it was much more complex than the basic ranges she had used during initial training. Multiple shooting positions were scattered across varied terrain, with targets at distances that seemed to stretch to the horizon. Master Sergeant Rodriguez was already there, standing near a table loaded with different rifles and equipment. He looked up as she approached, checking his watch with the automatic precision of a career soldier. Right on time, he said. That's a good start. Tell me, Martinez, did you sleep well? Yes, Master Sergeant. Good. You're going to need every bit of energy you can get. He gestured toward the table. Before we begin shooting, I want to talk about what we're really doing here today. Sarah stood at attention, listening carefully. This isn't just about marksmanship, Rodriguez continued. Any decent shooter can hit targets under ideal conditions. What I'm looking for is something much rarer. The ability to perform under pressure, to adapt to changing conditions, and to maintain precision when everything around you is going wrong. He picked up a clipboard and began walking toward the first shooting position. The evaluation consists of 5 phases. Each one is designed to test different aspects of your capabilities. You'll start with basic precision shooting, then move through increasingly complex scenarios. The final phase. He paused and looked at her directly. The final phase is something most recruits never see. They stopped at the first position, a standard prone shooting setup with targets at 200 meters. Rodriguez handed her a rifle Sarah recognized as an M24 SWS, the same weapon that had been assigned to several of her male colleagues the day before. Phase 1 is straightforward, he said. 10 shots, 10 targets. You have 15 minutes. The passing score is 90% accuracy. Sarah took the rifle, feeling its familiar weight. The M24 was a beautiful weapon, precisely manufactured and perfectly balanced. She ran through her mental checklist: sight alignment, breathing control, trigger squeeze, follow through. These were fundamentals her father had drilled into her years ago on the ranch, skills that had become as natural as breathing. She settled into position, adjusting the rifle's bipod and checking the scope settings. The first target appeared clearly in the crosshairs, a standard bullseye at 200 meters. Wind was minimal, lighting was good. Under these conditions, missing should be almost impossible. The first shot rang out across the range. Perfect center hit. Good, Rodriguez said, making notes on his clipboard. Consistent breathing. Good trigger control. Continue. Sarah worked methodically through the 10 targets, taking her time with each shot. Breathe in, breathe out halfway, hold, aim, squeeze. Each shot felt perfect as it left the barrel. When she finished, Rodriguez walked down to check the targets with binoculars. 10 for 10, he announced when he returned. Perfect score. That's better than most candidates achieve. Sarah felt a surge of confidence, but Rodriguez's expression remained neutral. Phase 2, he said, leading her to a different position. Moving targets, various distances, limited time. You'll have 30 shots at 25 targets. Some targets will appear multiple times, some only once. You have to decide which ones to prioritize and which ones to let go. This position offered a view of a complex range where targets would pop up randomly at distances ranging from 100 to 400 meters. Some were standard silhouettes, others were much smaller. Sarah could see that some positions would be easy shots while others would be extremely challenging. Rodriguez handed her a different rifle, an M40A5 with a more powerful scope. You have 3 minutes to study the range. Then, we begin. Sarah used every second of those 3 minutes, memorizing target positions, estimating distances, planning her priority sequence. When targets began appearing, she moved smoothly from one to the next, making split-second decisions about which shots to take and which to abandon as too difficult or time-consuming. When the phase ended, she had successfully hit 22 of the 25 targets she had chosen to engage. 88%, Rodriguez announced, just above the passing threshold. You made good tactical decisions about target priority, but your speed of engagement needs improvement. Sarah nodded, accepting the criticism. She had felt rushed during the final minute and knew she had missed at least 2 shots because of hasty trigger work. Phase 3 is where things get interesting, Rodriguez said, leading her to a position she hadn't noticed before. It was elevated, offering a view down into a valley where a mock village had been constructed. Urban environment, he explained. Multiple targets, but also multiple civilians. You must identify hostile targets and engage them while avoiding civilian casualties. Any civilian casualty results in automatic failure. Sarah studied the village through the scope. She could see figures moving among the buildings, some in military fatigues, others in civilian clothes. The challenge wasn't just marksmanship, it was judgment under pressure. You have 10 minutes, Rodriguez said. Engage all hostile targets while protecting civilian lives. Sarah settled into position and began systematically scanning the village. A figure in military fatigues appeared in a window, pointing what looked like a weapon toward a group of civilians. She engaged immediately. Clean hit. For the next 10 minutes, she worked methodically through the scenario, identifying and engaging hostile targets while carefully avoiding any shots that might endanger civilians. The final tally: 12 hostile targets eliminated, 0 civilian casualties. Excellent, Rodriguez said. And, for the first time, Sarah heard genuine approval in his voice. You demonstrated good judgment and fire discipline. Many candidates fail this phase because they rush their shots or misidentify targets. They were walking toward the 4th position when Sarah noticed they weren't alone. Commander Harrison was standing near a vehicle about 100 meters away, watching the evaluation through binoculars. Several other officers she didn't recognize were with him. Phase 4, Rodriguez said, apparently unconcerned by the observers. Stress shooting. You'll notice the physical conditioning course behind us. Sarah turned to see an obstacle course that looked like it had been designed by someone with a sadistic sense of humor. High walls, rope climbs, crawling sections, and what appeared to be a mud pit. You'll complete the full obstacle course, Rodriguez explained. Then, immediately engage targets at various distances while your heart rate and breathing are still elevated. You have to overcome physical exhaustion and maintain precision shooting capability. Sarah looked at the course again, estimating the time and energy it would require. This was unlike anything she had ever attempted. The course record for completion is 8 minutes, Rodriguez added. You need to finish in under 12 minutes. Then, successfully engage 8 targets at distances from 300 to 600 meters. Sarah nodded and moved to the starting position. When Rodriguez gave the signal, she threw herself into the course with everything she had. Over the wall, across the rope bridge, through the crawl section, up the climbing wall. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but she pushed through each obstacle with grim determination. When she reached the mud pit, she could hear her father's voice in her memory. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. She crawled through the cold, thick mud, feeling it seep into her uniform and equipment. The final obstacle was a 20-foot rope climb. By the time she reached the top, her arms felt like they were on fire. But she forced herself to ring the bell that marked completion of the course. 11 minutes, 40 seconds, Rodriguez called out as she stumbled to the shooting position. Outstanding time. Now pick up the rifle and show me you can still shoot. Sarah's hands were shaking from exhaustion, her breathing was ragged, and her heart felt like it might explode. The rifle scope showed a clear view of the first target, but the crosshairs were dancing all over the place because of her trembling. She forced herself to calm down, using breathing techniques her father had taught her years ago. Slow, deep breaths. Relax the muscles. Let the heart rate come down just enough to steady the sight picture. The first shot was perfect. So was the second. By the 4th shot, she had found her rhythm again, and by the 8th shot, she felt like she was back to normal precision. 8 for 8, Rodriguez announced, sounding impressed despite himself. That's remarkable shooting under stress conditions. Sarah wiped sweat from her face, leaving a streak of mud across her cheek. Thank you, Master Sergeant. Don't thank me yet, he said. We still have Phase 5. Rodriguez led her to an area of the range she had never seen before. It was behind a locked gate with warning signs posted in multiple languages. As they approached, Sarah could see another instructor waiting for them, a man whose bearing suggested even higher rank and more specialized training. Martinez, Rodriguez said, meet Chief Master Sergeant Williams. He runs our most specialized training programs. Chief Williams studied Sarah with eyes that seemed to look right through her. He was younger than she had expected, probably in his mid-30s, but his presence commanded immediate respect. I've been watching your evaluation, he said. Impressive performance so far. But Phase 5 is different from anything you've experienced. They passed through the gate into an area that looked more like a small town than a shooting range. Buildings, vehicles, and obstacles were arranged to simulate real-world operational environments. This is where we test candidates for our most elite programs, Chief Williams explained. The scenario you're about to face is classified. What you see here, what you do here, doesn't get discussed with anyone else. Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of what he was saying. The scenario is a hostage situation, Williams continued. Multiple hostages, multiple hostiles, complex environment. You'll have one shot at each target, and the margin for error is 0. Any mistake means mission failure. They reached a position overlooking the mock town. Sarah could see figures positioned throughout the area, some clearly marked as hostages, others as threats. The distances varied wildly, and many of the shots would require extreme precision to avoid hitting the wrong target. You'll have 20 minutes to study the scenario, Williams said, handing her a pair of binoculars. Then, one chance to execute perfectly. Sarah began her analysis, mentally cataloging each target, estimating distances, calculating wind effects, planning her engagement sequence. As she studied the scenario, she realized this wasn't just about shooting skill. It was about tactical thinking, decision-making under pressure, and the ability to execute complex plans flawlessly. When the 20 minutes ended, Chief Williams handed her a rifle unlike any she had ever seen before. It was sleek, sophisticated, and felt perfectly balanced in her hands. "This is what you came here for," he said quietly. "Show us what you're really capable of." Sarah settled into position, her mind crystal clear despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. Everything she had learned, every skill she had developed, every moment of training had led to this moment. The first shot had to be perfect, and it was. The rifle in Sarah's hands was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Its weight distribution was perfect, the scope was incredibly clear, and even the trigger felt different, more responsive, more precise. As she settled into position for the final phase, she could feel the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. Through the scope, the mock town spread out below her like a deadly puzzle. 7 hostages were positioned throughout the area, each one guarded by armed hostiles. The shots ranged from 200 meters to over 800 meters, and several required threading the needle between innocent civilians and their captors with millimeter precision. Chief Williams knelt beside her, his voice low and steady. "Take your time. Study each target. Plan your sequence. When you're ready, execute." Sarah began with the most distant target, a hostile positioned on a rooftop at approximately 850 meters. The figure was partially concealed behind a concrete barrier, with only his head and weapon visible. Wind conditions were minimal, but at that distance, even a slight miscalculation would mean a miss. She adjusted the scope, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. The distant target immediately dropped out of sight. "Target down," Chief Williams confirmed through his spotting scope. "Excellent shot. Continue." The second target was more complex. A hostile was positioned behind a hostage, using the civilian as a human shield. Only a small portion of the hostile's torso was visible around the hostage's shoulder. Sarah had to wait for the right moment, the right angle, before taking the shot. When it came, she executed flawlessly. One by one, she worked through the scenario. Each shot required different skills. Some were about pure marksmanship at extreme distance. Others demanded split-second timing or complex angle calculations. The fifth shot was particularly challenging. A hostile was holding a weapon on 2 hostages while standing in a doorway. Sarah had to wait nearly 3 minutes for the target to shift position enough to give her a clean line of fire. When she finally took the shot, Chief Williams was quiet for a long moment before confirming the hit. As Sarah prepared for the 6th target, she became aware of voices behind her. More observers had arrived, but she forced herself to maintain focus. The 6th shot was from 650 meters through a narrow window, requiring her to account for both wind drift and the effect of shooting through glass. The shot was clean. The final target was the most difficult of all. A hostile was positioned extremely close to a hostage, and both figures were partially concealed behind a vehicle. The shot required Sarah to fire at an angle that would take the bullet between 2 steel support posts, then strike a target area no larger than a playing card. Sarah studied the target for several minutes, calculating angles and distances. When she was finally ready, she took a deep breath, let half of it out, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. "All targets neutralized," Chief Williams announced. All hostages safe. Mission complete. Sarah set the rifle down carefully and rolled onto her back, suddenly, feeling the full weight of exhaustion from the day's evaluation. Above her, the sky was a brilliant blue dotted with white clouds, and, for a moment, she simply lay there taking in the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. Outstanding performance, Chief Williams said, helping her to her feet. I've administered this evaluation to over 200 candidates in the past 5 years. Fewer than 20 have achieved a perfect score. As they walked back toward the main facility, Sarah noticed that the group of observers had grown considerably. Commander Harrison was there, along with several other officers she didn't recognize. One man in particular caught her attention, an older colonel whose uniform indicated extensive combat experience and specialized qualifications. Martinez, Commander Harrison said as they approached. Exceptional work today. Chief Williams tells me you achieved perfect scores on all 5 phases of the evaluation. Thank you, sir. The colonel stepped forward. Recruit Martinez, I'm Colonel Davidson. I run the military's most specialized marksmanship programs. He paused, studying her with sharp eyes. What you accomplished today qualifies you for training programs that most soldiers never even hear about. Sarah felt her heart racing. Yes, sir. Tell me, Colonel Davidson continued. Are you prepared to commit to training that will push you far beyond what you experienced today? Training that will be physically and mentally demanding beyond anything in your current experience. Yes, sir. I am. Davidson nodded slowly. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, what was your assessment of Recruit Martinez's performance during the stress phase? Sir, she demonstrated exceptional resilience and maintained precision under extreme physical duress. Her recovery time and adaptation to elevated stress conditions were remarkable. And, Chief Williams, your evaluation of her tactical decision-making during the hostage scenario? Flawless, sir. She showed patience when required, decisiveness when necessary, and perfect execution under pressure. Colonel Davidson turned back to Sarah. Recruit Martinez, based on today's evaluation, you're qualified for assignment to the military's most elite marksmanship unit. This is a program so classified that its very existence is known only to a select few. Are you interested in learning more? Sarah's mouth had gone dry. Yes, sir. Excellent. Davidson gestured toward a vehicle parked nearby. There's someone I'd like you to meet. They walked to the vehicle, where a woman in military uniform was waiting. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with the bearing of someone who had seen extensive combat. Her uniform bore patches and insignia that Sarah didn't recognize, but everything about her suggested elite training and experience. Martinez, Colonel Davidson said, meet Captain Rebecca Stone. Captain Stone graduated from our program 3 years ago and has since completed assignments I can't discuss in detail. Captain Stone stepped forward and extended her hand. Impressive performance today, Martinez. I watched the evaluation from the observation post. Thank you, ma'am. Tell me, Stone said, how did it feel when you realized you were being tested on skills most recruits never encounter? Sarah thought for a moment. It felt like what I had trained for my entire life, ma'am. Like everything I had learned was leading up to that moment. Stone smiled. Good answer. That's exactly how it should feel when you find your calling. Colonel Davidson cleared his throat. Martinez, if you accept assignment to our program, you'll be transferred immediately to a specialized training facility. The program duration is 18 months, and it covers skills far beyond standard marksmanship. You'll learn advanced ballistics, target analysis, mission planning, survival techniques, and specialized equipment operation. What kind of specialized equipment, sir? Davidson exchanged a glance with Captain Stone, then looked back at Sarah. Show her. Stone opened a case in the back of the vehicle, revealing a rifle that took Sarah's breath away. It was clearly a precision instrument, but unlike anything she had ever seen. The design was sleek and futuristic, with integrated electronics and a scope that appeared to be more computer than optical device. This is the XM-47, Stone said quietly. Military designation, Black Talon. It's the most advanced sniper system ever developed. Range, over 2,000 meters. Computer-assisted targeting. Environmental compensation. Specialized ammunition. Sarah stared at the weapon in amazement. It's incredible. Only 12 people in the entire military are qualified to use this system, Colonel Davidson added. Captain Stone is one of them. If you complete our program, you would be another. Sarah looked around at the faces watching her. Commander Harrison wore an expression of pride. Master Sergeant Rodriguez and Chief Williams both nodded encouragingly. Captain Stone watched with the kind of respect one professional gives to another. There's something else you should know, Davidson continued. When word gets out about your performance today, and it will get out, you're going to face a lot of attention. Some of it will be positive, some of it won't be. The fact that you're a woman achieving at this level is going to make you a symbol whether you want to be or not. Sarah thought about the recruits who had mocked her request for a rifle just that morning. It seemed like a lifetime ago. I understand, sir. Do you? Davidson asked seriously. Because once you're identified as part of this program, there's no going back to anonymity. You'll be representing not just yourself, but the potential of everyone who might follow in your path. Sarah looked once more at the black Talon rifle, then back at the colonel. Sir, I'm ready for whatever that means. Davidson smiled for the first time since she had met him. In that case, welcome to the program, Martinez. He turned to Commander Harrison. Sir, we'll need to process her transfer immediately. She reports to the advanced facility Monday morning. As the group began to disperse, Captain Stone lingered beside Sarah. You know, when I went through this program 3 years ago, I was the first woman ever selected. It was challenging in ways I hadn't expected. How so, ma'am? The training itself was exactly what I had prepared for. But dealing with being a pioneer, being watched constantly, having every success and failure analyzed for what it meant about women in combat, that was the part no one had prepared me for. Stone paused, looking thoughtful. But you know what I learned? When you're holding that rifle, and you have a mission to complete, none of that other stuff matters. All that matters is your skill, your training, and your commitment to getting the job done. Sarah nodded. Yes, ma'am. I understand. I think you do. Stone closed the rifle case. I'll see you at the advanced facility on Monday. Fair warning, what you accomplished today was just the beginning. As the vehicles drove away, Sarah found herself standing alone on the range where her evaluation had taken place. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the training ground. In the distance, she could see other recruits returning from their own training exercises, unaware that their fellow soldier had just earned access to the military's most classified marksmanship program. Sarah walked slowly back toward the barracks, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. 18 months of advanced training. The black Talon rifle. Missions she couldn't yet imagine. And, yes, the responsibility of proving that excellence knows no gender. When she reached the barracks, she found several of her fellow recruits waiting for her. Davidson was there, along with a few others who had shown her support throughout training. So, Davidson asked quietly, how did it go? Sarah looked around at the faces watching her expectantly. These were good soldiers, people who would serve with honor regardless of the weapons they carried or the recognition they received. It went well, she said simply. Very well. She didn't mention the Black Talon program, the classified training facility, or the weapon that had taken her breath away. Those details would remain secret, just as they should. But, as she prepared for bed that night, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the memory of that morning, when her fellow recruits had mocked her simple request for a rifle. Tomorrow, word would begin to spread about a recruit named Martinez who had achieved something extraordinary. But, tonight, she was just a soldier who had proven that when you stand up for what's right and refuse to accept limitations others try to place on you, sometimes the universe responds with opportunities beyond your wildest dreams. In just 4 days, she would report to a facility whose existence was classified, to begin training on a weapon system most soldiers would never even hear about. But, for now, Sarah Martinez was content to rest in her bunk, knowing that she had looked challenge in the face and emerged victorious. The Black Talon was waiting.